We're hearing and seeing that a boat coming from Venezuela was struck by a missile while trying to transport apparently a large quantity of drugs. According to the White House, the strike killed all 11 people on board and raises some question about the due process and resurgence of the war on drugs.
It is really like an image from a movie, right? So what they've released, unclassified information, is literally the boat exploding, going up in the air, splashing down in the water. The boat's destroyed. Everybody on board was killed. And ABC's senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty has more on that story.
Historically, we've seen law enforcement go after these drug cartels. This is largely seen as a law enforcement operation. Essentially, what President Trump is doing is he's putting the military on the front lines of this drug war. Which is highly unusual. And we started to see this last month when the president directed military assets into the region. There are now 8 Navy ships that are operating under U.S. Southern Command's control, most of them in the Caribbean.
What's interesting to me, is that I think that this is, for a long time we talked about we need to de-escalate the war on drugs. This is an escalation of the war on drugs. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but it is an interesting way to do this.
Yeah, President Trump justified the strike, saying the boat was known to be filled with drugs.
We have tapes of them speaking. It was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. And everybody fully understands that. In fact, you see it. You see the bags of drugs all over the boat. And they were hit. Obviously, they won't be doing it again. And I think a lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape.
So I'm interested in hearing from our listeners if you think that the U.S. government was justified in taking out this boat.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of turns the whole idea of due process on its head.
A little bit.
I mean, there was one of our texters said, "Hey, did they give him a chance to surrender, or did they pull up and say, 'Hey, what are you guys doing?'" I mean, they just blew this boat up, and
right.
Trump continued to share his concerns about the origin of the alleged smugglers criticizing Venezuela.
Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country. Many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They've gone.
What's interesting is I actually have worked with Venezuelan refugees, and I think there's no question that the leadership of that country has just destroyed the country. But not everybody in Venezuela is a drug dealer. I do need to be clear about that. But we also have Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. He said, the Washington Post quotes him as saying that the U.S. forces could have stopped the boat. That's what they typically do. They'll stop the boat. They'll board the boat. They usually do it with the Coast Guard. Now we have a Navy presence as well. But that President Donald Trump chose instead to destroy it, killing everybody on board, and he wanted to send a deterrent message to traffickers.
Yeah, and it certainly will do that. I mean, we don't know. Apparently Pete Hegseth knows, and Donald Trump apparently knows who was on the boat.
Right.
He claims that they intercepted some conversations with them. The boat was traveling pretty quickly, and it looked like a fairly decent size.
It was a speedboat.
Craft, yeah.
Yeah, it was a speedboat, not like a little putt-putt.
And another thing we don't know, maybe you know more than I do, is how it was blown up. But it looked like it.
The news stories say that information is still classified, so they don't know if it was a drone or a missile or a torpedo. It was something big.
It was a compellingly good hit.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever fired that one knew what they were doing. But I don't know. I think the public's going to think this is a good way to fight the war on drugs, and
look,
maybe we've taken the concept of due process too far. I'm not saying that, but
look, that's one of the questions that people have, and they're saying, did they even have a chance to say, hello, we're not carrying drugs. I don't know. But we do have one texter, and again, you can text us. We have 2 texters, actually. You can text us at 57500, but one says, I'm not a fan of drug dealers, but is it legal to blow up a boat in international waters, and what proof did they have? And another one says, good job, President Trump, destroy those boats filled with drugs.
Okay, let me answer the first question.
Hey.
Is it legal? Almost certainly not. I mean, I don't think that was a legal act. International waters, I mean, I don't think you can just do that. Now, if in fact, and we'll know maybe more later, they had some surveillance or some information otherwise But I still don't think you can simply just blow the boat up. I can't imagine that would be legal.
Again, I agree. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but I wonder with President Trump's recent actions, and we'll actually talk about that in the next segment about, I feel like he thinks he has, because he's the president and the Supreme Court says presidential actions have immunity, that by default anything he does is legal.
Yeah. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth did say on an appearance on Fox and Friends that the administration officials, quote, knew exactly who was on the boat and, quote, exactly what they were doing. He didn't offer any evidence to support that, but he did say, similar to what the president said, that they knew what was going on. They knew what was happening on that boat, and they took it out because of what they believed was what they claimed they knew was happening.
Right. And Marco Rubio, he was in Mexico City, actually, and when this happened, and he was at a news conference and was asked questions about this. And he just said, look, trying to seize drug shipments hasn't dissuaded the cartels and traffickers. And then he said, what will stop them is when you blow them up.
Yeah. And so this is going to get the attention of drug smugglers. This will certainly do what I think the administration's goal was. Is it a means to an end? Is it a justifiable means to an end? I don't know.
I wonder if they'll. I mean, I'm really opposed to drug traffickers who are harming and killing people because of the drugs that they transport. But I wonder if they would start putting civilians on their boats, right? And then just saying, hey, we have civilians here. We have women and children here. I wonder.
That's not uncommon for terrorists, drug smugglers, and whatnot to put citizens in the line of fire to prevent them from being attacked. But yeah, that happens.
Yeah. One texter wants to know if we can be sure if the boats had been approached by the Coast Guard or whoever, that they would have been in danger. Maybe they would have been in danger if they had approached that boat. That's a good question too.
Yeah, we don't know whether we'll learn a lot more, but we don't know whether the individuals on the boat were armed, and if approaching them puts other people at danger. And if that's the case, you don't have to wait till you're shot at before you can shoot down a boat. But it is important that you.
One texter does ask, what would our response nationally be if President Obama had done this? I think that's a fair question to ask.
I do too. I can just answer and say President Obama would have never done this. But that's just me. That's just me. I mean, and maybe drugs were coming into the country under his watch that shouldn't have been. So if your goal is to get drugs from coming into the country, maybe there's some things that you think you need to do. I don't know. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just saying that there was certainly a goal behind it.
Well, as we mentioned, we've had several recent decisions by federal courts that have overruled President Trump's actions, including his placing of tariffs on other countries, deportations, and freezing funds for Harvard. He's appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll talk about that when we come up after the break. We're streaming live on KSLNewsRadio.com and on the app for KSL News Radio, sponsored by At Your Service Pros.